So, Halo, it's cool, right? I'm assuming that it is, solely based off of what I've been told over the past, 15 years of my existence. Because, believe it or not, Ripley, I've made that fucking joke before! I've never played Halo. Now the segue is all fucking ruined. Now I gotta fucking rewrite the video, re-record this fucking part. You see, I mentioned it in a previous video. I was a PlayStation boy growing up, but not by choice. No. It was due to the family that I grew up in. Because I shit you not, everybody I knew had a PlayStation 2. My family, my sister's families, my aunts and uncles. The only people I knew who had an Xbox were both my uncle on my mom's side, who only used it for Tiger Woods golf, true story, and my sister's dad's other kids had one, and I never played it because I never went there. No offense, Michael, just not my dad. No, you see, I grew up constantly playing the B-movie, which I am convinced is a form of torture used in North Korea. That's actually false, that statement was a blatant lie, but I would not be surprised whatsoever if it was true. Regardless, the way Master Chief and his thick companion Cortana were explained to me, it was almost like the Believe ad campaign for Halo 3, which I did grow up seeing. I'd hear story after story about this tin man who could single-handedly kick the ass of an entire platoon alongside his AI buddy. However, it took me buying the Master Chief Collection on PC 19 years after the game's initial release to finally start understanding why everybody liked this green fuck. Now, I had also bought the original on Xbox and even played the trial on PC, but for some reason, they just didn't completely vibe with me. I think I was too busy playing Saints Row or some dumb shit. But now I've officially played through the game on both easy and normal because I like my sanity. I get that Legendary is the true way to play the game, but at this point in my life, I'm totally fine with living a lie. The best way that I can articulate my experience with Halo is the best FPS story of 2001. It is up there for Game of the Year 2001, but so much good shit came out that year, man. Halo has the design philosophy of that time period which made games so enjoyable and replayable. It's a challenging game with a pick up and put down kind of playstyle. Video games really began to come into their own at this time. Titles like Half-Life, Metal Gear Solid 2, Deus Ex, System Shock, Final Fantasy 7 through 10, Earthbound, and Chrono Trigger were all released. And around this time, the whole Are Games Art discussion began to come up, which really shouldn't even be a discussion because the fucking answer is yes. Halo just released at the perfect time. It was a first-person shooter that was extremely innovative. And not in that, well, I guess it kinda did a cool thing way. No. Even I, a degenerate who constantly plays anime games with lots of big titty hoes, know damn well that without John 117, gaming as a whole would never be the same. Aspects of combat evolved like the lack of sprint and aim, as well as the inclusion of huge landscapes with space cars to drive around in, were really impressive. Without sprinting or aiming, your experience is totally reliant on your skill, and I obviously ended up dying. A lot, but I still had a blast. Halo had that grasp of a PC-like gaming experience that was exclusive to a console. As a matter of fact, Gearbox, famous for their Half-Life 1 expansions, Borderlands series, and their questionable CEO, ended up porting the game to PC, which is just fucking yeah, we'll touch more on that port later on. Games like Battlefront, who would get lots of credit for apparently popularizing big wide open fields and tons of vehicles, wouldn't release for another year, and even then that caliber of FPS gameplay was still trapped on PC for years, with their first console installment being released in 2005, leaving 4 years where Halo was the only game of its kind on console. But remember how I said that it was the best FPS story of 2001? That's because parts of this game have not stood up against the test of time. As a whole, Combat Evolved is still an extraordinary game to this day, and I recommend it to everyone, especially for only $10. However, there's just some shit that got on my nerves. Specifically, everyone's baby, the Warthog. Now this bad boy had tons of possibilities, especially for my initial D moments. But my personal issue is that it kind of, just slightly, controls like absolute garbage except for specific situations. The floaty nature of the car, the slow acceleration, and the ridiculous amount of times that it flips over even on the smallest jumps or turns. Look, just replay Halo 1's final run and just try not to be infuriated with the fire of 1,000 suns. In some cases, like in open field or in multiplayer, this whole wonky control scheme is pretty serviceable. Sure, the damn thing will flip, but it's fine. You're just hanging with your boys, sipping a beer? I don't know, I don't have fucking friends. Basically, in standard fun playthroughs with wide open areas, no stress, the absolute fucky nature of the Warthog is acceptable. But in a timed corridor with a shit ton of jumps and obstacles, I know I'm gonna have a bad time. Plus, there's no checkpoints during this final 5-minute run, and while 5 minutes ain't a lot of time, that shit gets really old really fast. You can be milliseconds from finishing this run when time runs out, and you just have to start from scratch, because fuck me, right? It's like one of those set pieces in Mirror's Edge or Uncharted 3 that really tries to be an epic finale, but just ends up being a pain in the ass that I dread on a second playthrough. Speaking of dreads, this release of Combat Evolved is actually the port of a remake. This game is actually Combat Evolved Anniversary, released in 2011 with remastered audio, visuals, and the ability to alternate between the new look and the old look with the press of a button all in real time. I look at Anniversary to the original CE, like I specifically look at Persona 4 and Persona 4 Golden. Yeah, I love Persona, get over it. The time gap between P4 and Golden was 4 years. In that time, 16:9 took over the 4:3 aspect ratio, gameplay tweaks were made to make the game easier or just more enjoyable, characters were added, story sections were altered, graphics were changed, the whole 9 yards. Now, this doesn't inherently make Golden better than P4. It's more accessible, and for that reason alone, way more people will play it. But just because it's different and technically looks better, doesn't mean that it's automatically superior to the original. Believe me, ask a bunch of PS4 fans, they will tell you their opinion on Golden. And the same thing applies to Halo CE and Anniversary. There's something about the look of the original Halo, both the place and the overall game, that gets, as the kids say, lost in the sauce of Anniversary. And this is coming from somebody who has nothing against remasters or remakes. But there's something about the stylized realism of the original game that's captivating still to this day. The dark corridors capture the initial disorientation of the first level in the Pillar of Autumn, and then they improve that fear that the Flood caused in the later levels. Anniversary is just too damn bright. All the aesthetic moodiness and the moments that I've been told are scary aren't anymore. I can see clearly now the lights are on. Plus, lots of the interior design now looks busy, to say the least. This remake was made back during the time where game developers thought that modern graphics meant overly realistic textures with just a lot of needless shit on screen. According to Halo fans, this was a real issue with the series that's now being rectified with Infinite. However, just looking at Anniversary as an individual title, it definitely falls into that too much needless shit avenue. However, when you're outside, roaming around Halo, that's when the graphics serve the game justice. Lots of lush greenery, beautiful skyboxes, improved water and terrain, just exquisite. So the new stuff is a mixed bag. That means that the original look is the way to go, right? Psych, bitch! Even the original graphics aren't all that great either. This is because all the later releases of Halo CE, including Anniversary, were based on the Gearbox PC port from 2003, which despite owning a copy, I've never played it. I solely own it for collection reasons. So apparently the PC port has issues with bump mapping, broken effects, and incorrect models. If you want a way more thorough rundown, then I highly suggest Late Night Gaming's video on the CE port and the Master Chief Collection in the card in the upper right hand corner of the video. In the end, neither of these looks are entirely accurate to what Halo is, but I'm still glad that we're able to choose between the two whenever we like. If we really ask ourselves if Combat Evolved still holds up to this day, then that's going to be the easiest question I've ever answered, and I went through the American education system. I do not know what that was implying. Let's just keep it moving and act like it never happened. Most of the time, to answer the question, does it hold up, depends on the person, unless there's a superior release or something. But especially with a title like Halo, there is a definite reason why people like playing these games, regardless of this game almost being as old as I am. Even if, for some miraculous reason, I had the absolute worst time playing this game. If I personally had the shittiest gaming experience of my entire life, I still could not, in good faith, plop my ass down at this desk and say that the game is bad. I think that Combat Evolved is one of those games where, while it may not gel with you personally, and some of the gameplay aspects have been done better in other games released afterwards, it still holds its place as one of the best games of the 2000s. I'm actually going to take some time before I even buy Halo 2 for myself. I legitimately want to drain all the enjoyment that I can from CE before I decide to move on to the sequel. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I wanted to do something a little more calm and laid back and just talk about a game that I just really had fun playing instead of like doing a 30-minute analysis or some shit. Anyways, like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll catch you guys next week. Later, kids. Have a good night. Yo, Cortana thick as fuck. Who let her be this thick? What the fuck is going on, bro? I wanna fuck.